Okay, we're going to make a new project for assignment 3, aka Portland. So first thing I need to do is launch Avid Media Composer, and that brings us to the Select a Project dialog box. That menu also is where you make a brand new project from scratch. And I believe I sent information on how to make that project. That's in an email that gave you the naming convention, the project format and project type, then information about where to put the bins. So this is opening, initializing all this stuff. I've given you a couple of different ways of downloading the media and the bins. You can see here there's certain plugins I don't have on my system for direct link or AMA links to different camera formats. So I'm just going to skip over all those. So once that's done, I'm going to make a new project. All right, so I've already made one here, but I'm going to make a brand new one. Let's pretend I haven't done this before. But the new project is going to live for now under users shared in the Avid Media Composer folder in the shared Avid Projects folder. If I go to my hard drive, and there is users shared, and under shared, I have an Avid Media Composer folder, and I've highlighted certain things purple. On my system here, there's where the user settings live. There's the Avid Attic, which has backups of bins. And here is the shared Avid Projects. Not to be confused with shared LUTs, shared Avid Projects. So this is where this project is going to be created and live. Now, I already made one earlier, and here's a project named Sue I made a few years ago. Now this is the folder for the project that was made, Sue in this case, and there's an AVP in that folder. That's the Avid project file, and there's certain bins I made, and a folder with graphics bins and things like that. And so the point is, if I want to move the Sue project, I can move it piecemeal, the individual bins that is, but I want to move the whole thing to my hard drive. I take the whole folder, and that will give me everything to reconstruct this Avid project somewhere else. I would never just copy the AVP, the Avid project file by itself, because I need all these elements to reconstitute a project named Sue. Okay? This project I made earlier, I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. So that's where the new project's going to live, and I'm going to go back to Avid Land and make that new project. So I hit the aptly named New Project button over here. And the naming convention is Portland _ Avid _ project, and then _ your last name. Now, the format. I'm going to have you make these projects in the 30i NTSC format. This is standard definition. This media is low resolution media, just so we can move the media around and upload it and download it. There are a myriad of other formats. This would be HD 1080 and different frame rates depending on the format. So in this case, we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to pick 30i, that's 30 frames per second, more like 29.9 frames per second, interlaced. I is for interlace as opposed to P for progressive. The color space can stay in the 601 color space, and the aspect ratio can stay 16:9. We're not making a stereoscopic project. This is not going to be the 3D Portland documentary. It's just going to be 2D. Anyway, so I pick all that stuff, and I'm going to press OK. And there's my new Portland Avid Project _ Chesak. That's where it's living. Again, if I want to move it later, let's say I'm done working on this computer and I need to go across town. I want to move the project folder and all the stuff in it. I would go get that out of the shared Avid Projects folder. That's users shared Avid Media Composer share Avid Projects. Press OK. Without further ado, all right, so this is what the project looks like. It's generic. There's no bins in it. There's actually just one blank empty bin. So if you're trying to figure out where your bin lives, which was going to tell you where your project lives, is to right-click the bin in this case and do reveal file. Now I use this often for several reasons. Just a quick way to bring me down to the desktop. And so it's brought me into the Portland project I just created. There's the new bin. and there's all the other stuff that's made it automatically when you make a new Avid project. If I started making new bins by clicking over here in the bin browser, doing the shortcut Command N, or right-clicking to make a new bin, you can see I just made additionally 3 more empty bins, and that's reflected in here at the Finder level. Now these bins I don't really need. I just was doing this for demonstration purposes, so I'm going to select all of them and Command Delete at the Finder level and remove them, and they'll go bye-bye. And there'll be question marks because they're all open, and that's confusing the project in this case. But I don't need those bins because I have created a couple of bins for you. And me pretending to be you in this case, I'm pretending to be the student, I'm going to show you where those bins go. So there's, whether you're getting the bins through an email or through Google Drive or Dropbox, they're going to be here in the Project 3 Portland source files folder. And there's a folder in there that says Project 3 bins, move to your new project folder. So essentially, I'm going to take these bins and move them over into my new folder. Now, I know some of you might be tempted to drag the bin in here to the browser and think it would import a link up that way, and you would be incorrect. No matter how hard you try, the bin is not going to drop in here and constitute or live in the project hierarchy. What you need to do is do that at the Finder level. Now let's pretend I was going to work on both of these Portland options, Coffee and Zoo Bomber. I could actually bring this folder over here, and I would get the folder with the 2 bins. So I'm going to do that. Or I could have just dragged the single bin. Here's a single bin called Clip Trim, which has nothing to do with our project. It's just sitting out here on my desktop just for demonstration purposes. I could drag that in, and so that bin's there. These 2 bins are in this folder. I click over back to the project, and I'll do Command S or File Save, and you'll see that there's a folder with 2 bins as well as this other bin over here. So let's see what we got. Let's ignore this bin for now. And let's look at the coffee and the Zoo Bomb. So I'm going to double click that, and I've got a color scheme for this coffee bin that's sort of reddish brown coffee colored. There's 4 clips. There's some notes. There's also a string out sequence, which is basically all these clips in one sequence for reference purposes. You don't need to start editing with this sequence. It's just there. You know, if you want to look at everything at once, you can look at it through this sequence. Zoo Bombers is, I've got Zoo Bomber clip 3, 2, 1. I'm double clicking on the name, and those should reorder. So POV is mini DV footage of I guess a DV camera strapped onto one of the Zoo Bomb bikes, POV down the hill, and then this is the bigger camera footage, 1, 2, and 3. Now showing up, that means the media is offline. Another way to see if media is offline is to simply switch your bin into frame view. And I'm going into frame view, and yes, media is offline. So I've got the bin, I've got the project, but I'm missing one thing, and that's the media. I also have this overlay here, which is called the bin map. I'm clicking the little fast menu here. I'm going to hide the bin map for now. Get that out of my way. So we put the bins where they needed to go, and they're over here now in my project. The media is over here, and you can see the Zoo Bomb media is 2.5 gigabytes, and the coffee media is 1.37 gigabytes. And then this is just an empty Avid MediaFiles folder, empty for use or reference. And this is the folder structure where these 2 folders want to go. Now the reason why I didn't set this up is because you might already have an Avid MediaFiles folder with an MXF on your hard drive. You probably do from assignment 1 and 2, Where's the Bloody Money, and The Great Sahara. And I do too. I actually have one down here. Let me get over here to my hard drive. Pop that puppy open, and there it is. And so I have one here, and I put a little X next to it because, I've got like 400 gigabytes of stuff for the class in there that I use for demonstrations, but I don't want to deal with that right now. So I just put an X next to it and pretending it doesn't exist. It's also going to hide, it's going to prevent Avid from seeing any media in there. So I'm going to go ahead and use this empty folder, because that's all it is. It's two folders actually. And then I'm going to get rid of the note here. And this just wants to end in the letter S with no space. So I've got my Avid MediaFiles folder and an MXF, but obviously nothing into it, 6K. So what I want to do next, you can see the note here, Project 3 Media, move to Avid MediaFiles MXF folder. So that's exactly what you need to do with 8 or 9 or both if you feel so inclined. Let's pretend I'm going to work on both. I want extra credit. I'm going to drag both of those in, and maybe I have a fast enough internet connection to download both of those folders, those media file folders, number 8 and number 9. So in this case, it's going to take about a minute moving from my desktop to my hard drive. Once that's done, the bin should see this media. Now, if it doesn't, sometimes I find a troubleshooting technique is to rename the folder over here. You might want to just rename it 9 or rename it 8, depending on which one you're using. And there's also a couple of little items in here, in addition to the media. There are these two little database files here. So if you look at, your at the Finder level, you can see kind here, and these are two database files. So sometimes you can see these two databases were written in 2010. You might need to delete those and let Media Composer rewrite those from scratch. You would not want to delete the media, however, the MXF over here. So that's just a troubleshooting technique that sometimes I find people have to do. They have to rename the folder so it's a simpler name and get rid of the databases and let Avid rename them from scratch. So I copied both of those media folders over into my MXF Avid MediaFiles structure here. And let's see if this is going to read. Click over here and boom. So that is Zoo Bombers. And maybe this needs to take needs to refresh. So if I'm moving the slider here now, these 4 clips are refreshed and I can see the media. I can see that the clips are looking at the media, I should put it that way. And let's see if this plays. It's a little stuttery here, trying to play this stuff while I'm doing the screen record. But just a couple of navigational features. You can be in this text view. That's what these icons are here. Frame view, and you have your slider to make the frames bigger or smaller. You can play frames in. You can play the media in the bin by JKL, or you're hitting the space bar or whatever you're used to doing. I'm used to using JKL. L forward, J backward, and you'll notice you can park and change the representative frame. Like this says Zoo Bomber. I can't tell what that is. So if I play forward fast by double clicking L multiple times, okay, now we're seeing something. We're seeing some bikers, and maybe I want that to be the representative frame. The POV stuff is a little dark. I'm just going to double click that, load that in the source monitor. I'll talk about how you can color correct that at a later date. And I'll also talk about how you can subclip this stuff out. I'm going to go back to linear view because I have notes here. And so yes, one of my notes tells you in the notes column that the third clip is the interview. So you're building the story here around the interview. So you want that, and you want to find the sound bites of Randy. There's also a little bit of B-roll coverage of them starting out. So this was all shot on tape originally, maybe 10 years ago. And so the camera stopped and started. And so it comes in as one continuous clip. I'll do a full demo on subclipping later, but I already have this first chunk marked. And you might be like, well, I'd like to put that aside and then get into like listening to the interviews. So with this marked in and out, you pick an in, you pick an out. You look at your tracks down here in the timeline. These are the source tracks for the source clip. There's the source monitor. If I drag over here, I'll just drag into the bin. I've now made a little sub clip of just that section. I forget how long this thing is. About 20 minutes, starting at 1306 and going to 1327, something like that. Anyway, let's look at coffee. There's B-roll shots as well as some exterior shots, and there's a string out sequence here for reference. So when I double click a sequence, and again, this is a bit of a subtle icon. I hope they change this soon. The 3 frames is a sequence versus the single frame is a clip versus the smaller frame is a subclip. So this is a string out of the interviews with the interior B-roll and then the exteriors. So sometimes what I like to do is put all the clips in a single sequence just for reference purposes. That's all that's there for. Now, you don't have to edit with that. You might use it as a source sequence by dragging it over into the source monitor. First thing I want to do is clear out the record monitor, and I'm using the little twirl down in the upper right, and I'm going to clear out that monitor. Boom, a sequence is a source, and that will be a question. In case I made the project, save early, save often, file, and all the open bins. And there's usually a little asterisk next to the name if they have not been saved. When those asterisks go away, the bins have been saved. And one more thing I wanted to mention is if you make a project and you don't actually move the bins into the project, this is a cautionary tale. So here's a lost bin that's just on my desktop, just a random bin that's orphaned from a project, but maybe I needed to move it over here for some reason. If you make a project and you haven't actually moved the bins into the project folder, you could end up with a situation like this bin that's not really living. It's not living in the project at all. It's being accessed through the project. And if I open the browser here and twirl this open, you can see this is living on the desktop. And this is a way to read other bins if you needed to look at someone else's bin for some reason. But just be aware of that. Other bins versus bins that are actually physically moved into the project. One more thing, in addition to the hierarchy of the project, well, a couple more things. I'm going to close the lost bin because I don't really need it. That was just an example. But in addition to figuring out, where your media is living and where your bins live, you can, so notice my offline column is empty. These are the tracks for the clips. You can also see that where the media is living in this case, right there in the bin by looking at the drive column. Or you can right click and do that reveal file trick. And so this is an interior B-roll, and it's going to find the folder, which is living in MXF, living in Avid MediaFiles, out at the root level of my hard drive. And by root level, I mean Avid MediaFiles is naked. It's not inside any other folder. It's not inside a parent folder. It's going to be out at the root level. Okay. And what it selected was 3 files. And why is that? Well, there's V1, A1, A2. So those 3 files are separated out, and that's why it selected 3 files when I did reveal file. So that can help you figure out where your media went. And if you right click, you can navigate back and see, okay, it's on my drive, and it's 1, 2, 3 folders, and then it's out at the root level inside my drive. But you can also use that for bins. So if you're trying to figure out where your bin lives, which was going to tell you where your project lives, you can do a reveal file, and boom, there's my bin, and there's the folder, and it's inside the Portland project. So I can see where that's living, and where's that living? I'm right clicking. Oh yeah, it's in the shared Avid Projects, and gosh, I should move that because I need to take it with me somewhere else to a different computer or something like that. So I think that's it. One more thing I'm going to mention though. Over here in the world of Microsoft Word, note, I sent bins, project, media, but the scripts. So the script is actually, it's one file with 2 scripts, one for coffee and one for Zubom. So if you're like, well, where's the Zubom script? Where's the coffee script? It's just called ECBU Project 3 scripts. And you can see how this is structured. Here's one character, from the interview of Goatworthy, and then this guy Slice Moulton, then Goatworthy, then Moulton. Now the order of this stuff, you don't need to, like I said in the Zoom session earlier, we don't need to be verbatim. There's some strike-throughs here. You might say, hey, I want to keep that. I'm going to go against the wishes of the producer. And you might find other elements as you're pulling through this stuff and looking for sound bites and looking for these moments, in this case in the coffee shop. So the indented stuff is the interviews, and the not indented stuff is sort of the wild sound, the sync sound from the environment. And the same goes for Zoo Bombers. There's more strike throughs, so you can say, well, I kind of like that, what he's saying, so I'm going to keep it. Get, informative. People need to learn about the Zoo Bomb bikers in this day of COVID-19. But there is, a storytelling challenge to be had here, so that's what that's all about. So you should be able to access the scripts either through Isilon or Google Drive or Dropbox. So I think that's about it. I will double check my notes, and except my cat is sitting on my notes right now. Okay, to recap, I made a new project via the Select Project window. I picked the format, gave it a name. Once I set up the project, it opens and it's generic. There's no bins in it. There's actually just one blank empty bin. So I dragged the bins into the project at the Finder level. I showed you how to use Reveal File to show where the media is living, to show where the bins are living. I warned you about bins outside of the project, so don't just open a project and then start double-clicking bins that you haven't actually moved into it. And I think that's about it. So I'm going to stop this and see how it worked out.